I grew up on sets, and I loved the fact that people got up at the crack of dawn, and then they'd look at a scene and go, how are we going to do this? We're doing something for the first time that no one's ever done before, and we got to figure it out. And the distance between putting on like a high school play or like a summer camp musical and making a movie is not as far as you think. It's still just people throwing things together with Scotch tape.
When Jason Reitman was a kid, he would hang out on his dad's film sets. His father was Ivan Reitman, a really talented director behind a long list of era-defining comedies, including Meatballs, Stripes, Ghostbusters, and Dave. Jason followed in his dad's considerable footsteps. He started directing his own films, beginning with the 2005 indie comedy Thank You for Smoking. His follow-up was the smash hit Juno. The movie stars Elliot Page as Juno, a 16-year-old who discovers she's pregnant after sleeping with her shy and artsy friend, Paulie Bleeker, played by Michael Cera. Allison Janney is Juno's stepmother. J.K. Simmons plays her dad.
I'm pregnant.
Oh, God. Who is the kid?
The baby? I don't really know much about it other than, it has fingernails, allegedly.
Nails, really?
Yeah.
No, I don't. I mean, who is the father, Juno?
It's Paulie Bleeker.
Paulie Bleeker? I didn't think he had it in him.
I know, right?
Juno made more than $200 million at the box office. It won the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay, and Reitman earned a nomination for Best Director, proving to everyone, including himself, that he could stand on his own as a director. Jason then went on to make one of my favorite films, which we'll discuss in this episode. My guest today is one of those filmmakers who really knows how to talk about his craft, making movies. Writer-director Jason Reitman. I'm your host, Ben Mankiewicz, and this is Talking Pictures, a podcast about movies, about memories, and all the stuff that happens in between. Turner Classic Movies makes this podcast with the streaming service Max, where you can see some of the movies mentioned in this episode. Believe it or not, I have a few important things in common with Jason Reitman. We were both extremely close to our dads, and our fathers each had careers that loomed large. Jason's dad revolutionized movie comedies in the 70s and 80s. My dad was an influential figure in politics. I started by asking Jason how his father's success impacted his own career.
I made an early decision in life, which was I realized that everyone had a presumption of who I was going to be because I was my father's son. And the attitude was, okay, so he's going to be an asshole. He's never worked a day in his life. He doesn't know what it means to earn a dollar. He probably has an alcohol or drug problem. He's probably never studied anything. And everything's always been handed to him. And I just realized, lean in. Like, just have fun with it. At that point, the bar is going to be low.
That's right.
I'm not going to have to do much to impress them at this point because they think I'm a fucking idiot. And so if I'm in France, speak French with as thick an American accent as possible. Like, you already don't like me. Let's just lean in. Let's have fun with this.
You already don't like me. So it's amazing how much I hear myself when you tell that story. My father was really a big deal in Democratic politics, and being the son of Frank Mankiewicz and the grandson of Herman Mankiewicz and the nephew of Joe Mankiewicz and the cousin of Tom Mankiewicz, the term Nepo baby didn't exist when I got hired at TCM, but they would have used it,
Right.
Even though,
you're the whole family tree.
That's the whole family tree.
You're a Nepo nephew, Nepo grandson, Nepo son.
That's right. That's right. So, and I carried that burden for a long time. First of all, I don't know if you felt this way about your dad, but I thought, he was so smart and so funny. And I just thought, I'm never going to be as smart or as clever as he is.
Right.
And you could still be smart and clever. There's still room to be smart and clever. Just
but
a
I
level
wouldn't
below.
have the kind of rabbinical qualities that my father had.
Right. That's right. And
Yeah.
was that, I mean, as you embarked on this, did you think I'm going to exceed the old man, or did you not even think of it like that?
It's interesting. Last week I was in Slovakia, and I went to visit the hometown of my grandparents and great-grandparents for the first time. And my family has an interesting history in that. My family were survivors, and in post-war Czechoslovakia, which an authoritarian communist government, and was also anti-Semitic.
It's
my-
good. It's good that they could share something. Yeah.
My family escaped under the floorboards of a boat when my father was 4 years old, up the Danube River, up to Vienna before they moved to Toronto, and I went back to my grandparents' hometown for the first time. I saw the house that my father was born in. I went to the local synagogue where my grandparents were members. They had the birth records there where I saw my father's name in a book from 1946 with my grandparents' names and the name of the mohel who performed my father's circumcision. And it was a moment to think about the journey that my father went on as someone who one morning in 1950 was dressed in 4 layers of clothing because that's all he was going to be able to bring with him, and was under the floorboards of a boat for 2 days before they moved up the river, took refuge in a hospital in Vienna, and eventually moved to Canada, where my father learned English, became a musician, went to college on a music scholarship, started a film club, and eventually made films that are known around the world. He made people laugh that I'll never meet, and left the world a better place than he found it. And so, yeah, I'm never going to touch my father's legacy. And I kind of knew that growing up. I knew that being on my dad's sets. I knew that by the time I was in college. And I ran away from filmmaking. I was going to try to be a doctor at first. I thought I'd be a psychiatrist. And my father convinced me to be a filmmaker. I have the first Jewish dad in history who said, "Don't be a doctor, be a filmmaker."
That's a great line.
And I've been trying to chart my own path, but I've kind of known the whole time that journey. When I think about my father's journey from Komarno, this border town on the between Hungary and Slovakia, where his own parents were survivors, he had to escape. He had to truly create a life of his own. Versus, I grew up in Beverly Hills. I grew up actually down the block from the Menendez brothers. They were my neighbors growing up.
First of all, under the floorboards of a boat. I mean, it's Inglourious Bastards and Melanie Laurent, but
Yeah.
on a boat.
Yeah,
I mean-
my father did something kind of amazing. He interviewed his own parents, or he had his parents interviewed by a journalist, and so we have an oral history from each of them about their experience in pre-war, and then Auschwitz, and then their escape, and the detail is incredible. And when I read it, it's like they're talking to me. And if I can segue into movies, because I know that's probably what you want to talk about, when I read this stuff, when I hear about this stuff, what's amazing to me is that my father went on to make some of the greatest comedies of all
Yeah,
time.
totally.
This is the guy who made Animal House. This is the guy who made Stripes, and this guy made Ghostbusters. Or even Dave, a movie that is so optimistic about American politics and about human decency, when he had full right to just make dour movies.
Forever. That's right. So I recite my father's history like that. I mean, I'm like, look, he grew up in Beverly Hills, right? His father was already here, the screenwriter, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that when your dad died, that I thought of my father when the way people talked about your dad, like this, the sort of reverential, kind way
Yeah.
they talked about when he died, which was similar to what happened when my father died. He was older than your father, but even like Howard Stern. I remember listening to Howard talking about Ivan Reitman and thinking, boy, this is the way people talked about my dad when he died.
Yeah, and what I feel most lucky now, of course, is how close my father and I were, and that's his doing. he leaned in. He was a great dad, and really mentored me as a storyteller, and was hard on me in a way that is not easy to do as a parent. As a parent, like all you want to do is tell your kids that they're great.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
just want to be like,
say yes and give them a hug and tell them it's great.
yeah,
That's
you're
right.
fantastic. I'm proud of you. Nice job. And it's really hard to say to your kid, I think you could do better. I think you know you could do better. And my father, who really loved me, was tough on me. And was tough on me about my moral code, was tough on me about my work ethic, and was tough on me on storytelling. The first time he read one of my scripts, he told me later on, he said, look, I realized you could write, and I made a decision very early on to treat you like a professional writer, even though you were a teenager. And so he was just really strict. I mean, the first time my dad read my script for Up in the Air, which is, one of the best things I've ever written. First time he read it, he looked at me and said, a movie needs a plot. Because my father believed in this thing, which I think is true, that in order to bend the metal, you got to get it hot. And people aren't going to just take your notes. You got to heat them up. And that works differently for each writer. But sometimes you got to let them know, you're in trouble. This isn't there. I know you think you're there. You're not there. And it's only when they start to warm up, it's when the metal gets hot and you can start to shape them.
Up in the Air became one of the most celebrated movies of 2009. George Clooney plays Ryan Bingham, a consultant obsessed with travel, spending most of his days in airports and hotels. His job is soul-crushing. He's hired by corporations to fly into town and fire their employees.
Who the fuck are you, man?
Excellent question. Who the fuck am I? Poor Steve has worked here for 7 years. He's never had a meeting with me before, or passed me in the hall, or told me a story in the break room. And that's because I don't work here. I work for another company that lends me out to pussies like Steve's boss who don't have the balls to sack their own employees. And in some cases for good reason, because people do crazy shit when they get fired.
The film went on to make more than $150 million at the box office. Clooney got an Oscar nomination for Best Actor. Reitman got 3 for Best Director, Best Picture, and Best Adapted Screenplay. The film has so many great moments in it. It's one of my favorite movies. I don't think I realized it till I rewatched it, how high up on any list it is. But it's just so many moments. And one of them is so incorrect in my head. It's in a good way. Like, it shows you how powerful it is. Talk about no dialogue. So obviously it's the big climactic moment in it for him personally, is he goes to see Vera Farmiga, who he's having an affair with, and he thinks, oh, this is going to be great. I'm actually feeling something for somebody. And he goes to see her house, and it turns out she got a real life, right? As she says, he's an escape. He's
Yeah, she calls him a parenthesis.
A parenthesis. That's the end. The last thing she's parenthesis. He doesn't even know how to respond to that. Yeah. Right on the phone when she says that to him. So, and I have that in my head as like a 3-minute scene, 4-minute scene. I think it's like 18 seconds. I mean, it's he answers the door, they stare at each other.
You know what's funny about that scene? So we're shooting that scene on day 2. It's like one of the worst things you can do to an actor is be like, hey, that penultimate emotional moment, right. We're going to shoot that on day 2. I hope you're all right. But George is, a rock star. He can really kind of do anything. And we're shooting in Detroit Airport, which has just recently had a renovation. They spent like $1 billion, and it's a gorgeous airport. It's the poster of the movie is George standing in front of the fountain.
It is a great airport. You could spend the day there.
It's really pretty.
Yeah.
And they have a monorail. They have one of those trams that runs from terminal to terminal, and we're shooting on it. And we're doing the takes, and Vera is on a phone calling George on his phone. And he's doing the dialogue in between these 2 terminals. We have the length of track between 2 terminals to do the scene, and we do.
He's in one of the trams.
He's
right?
in one of the trams, and it's connected. It literally has to play in one. The doors are going to open. The doors are going to close. It's going to stop. We can't control the speed of this thing. And George is realizing, it probably takes 30 seconds for this tram to get from one stop to the next, but the scene is 45 seconds long. There's no 2 ways about it. And so every time we're landing at the second spot and he's nowhere done on the scene. And he does this magical piece of acting where he just starts cutting Vera off halfway through each line of dialogue, and he starts timing it out perfectly so he can get his dialogue to land right as the tram comes to a stop. And that's when I knew how lucky I was.
Yeah, that's a professional. There's so many just lovely, lovely moments in this movie, and so much heartache, so many great looks when you realize what a great actor he is. It's always worth reminding people when someone is that beautiful, right? Like no, this is
he's an actual movie star.
He's an actual movie star. That's right. Yeah.
What was thrilling for me about that film too was that I got to commune with him in a way that we are always trying to commune with movie stars. We're always feeling these feelings of self-doubt and of loneliness, and we wonder if anyone else feels the same thing. And when you see a character on screen feel those same things, it's extremely heartening. And I make a lot of films about loneliness. It's something that's been pointed out to me recently by journalists, and I wasn't fully aware of it, but I know on that film, I was writing about my questions about marriage, about relationships, about family, about the purpose of connection, because I was having genuine doubts. And George, of course, at the time was
most famous bachelor in the country.
Exactly, the most famous bachelor in the world. And so to watch him have those conversations and defend his ideas to the level that he can on screen, and then to challenge them up until the last moment and then leave him adrift to make his own decisions, it felt like not only was the audience getting to have that question with him about, what does it feel like to be lonely? Is it okay? But on a very personal level, for me, having just written this alone and then watching George act it out was really heartening.
You had so many inventive ideas up in the air. So did those? Obviously, it's not directly come from your dad, but that has to have been sort of growing up on film sets. That creative, how do we solve this problem, was in you early, because this is your third movie, right? Up in the Air.
In the Air's third movie.
Yeah.
I grew up on sets. I grew up on the trucks, and I grew up wanting to be a member of the crew. And it's funny because I just made this movie about the opening night of Saturday Night Live, and it's a love letter to Saturday Night Live and everything that Lauren created, but it's more than anything a love letter to creativity and what it feels like to make things.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's what I got to grow up around.
Yeah.
People always want to ask, what was it like growing up around Bill Murray? And it's like, I don't know. I didn't spend a lot of time with Bill Murray growing up, but I spent a lot of time on the camera truck.
Right.
I spent a lot of time hearing dirty jokes, from the sound team, and I knew what it was like to be part of the circus. And that's what I loved. I loved the fact that people got up at the crack of dawn and they had their breakfast burrito and their shitty coffee, and then they'd look at a scene and go, how are we going to do this? We're doing something for the first time that no one's ever done before, and we got to figure it out. And that the distance between putting on like a high school play or like a summer camp musical and putting on and making a movie is not as far as you think. It's still just people throwing things together with Scotch tape.
Yeah, solving problems. There's some quote, I had it here, but I can't even find it. I wrote it down. But basically here it is right now, during Up in the Air. He said, the best thing I could do is die after making Up in the Air. Like that would be that would be
By the way,
yeah.
it remains kind of true. I made 3 films that were really well liked back to back. Thank You for Smoking Juno and Up in the Air. And I remember I used to say that. Yeah, the best thing I could probably do is die right now. And yeah, I think people would probably speak fondly of me. I hadn't had time to go out and fail yet.
In another podcast that you did, you said then a line that I've used in my life 25 times and I've never heard anyone else say in exactly the same words. I've never seen cocaine. I was like, what? Yeah, I'm like, people just I guess I've been at parties where they were done and they all he's not interested.
I made it 42 years without seeing cocaine. And then my girlfriend at the time bought a pair of red leather shorts on a consignment website And when they arrived, there was a little vial of Coke in the pocket. And that was the first time I saw cocaine. I still haven't tried it, but it's indicative of the kind of lives that my parents set out for me, even though they had moved down from Canada to Los Angeles and we were living in Beverly Hills. I think there was a presumption that I was around a lot of parties. And the truth was, one, I was like a big AV movie nerd who genuinely didn't go to parties. And it just also just never really interested me.
Yeah, same. I wasn't a geek. I wasn't a movie. I mean, for me, it was sports. Like that's what I cared about.
Right.
Sports and politics. Yeah. So I don't know. People just it never got offered. But so your folks, so you could have had this.
Oh, we're equally boring.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's like they knew they were going into the bathroom and they're like, Ben doesn't want it. It's okay. It's no big deal. But like your folks were determined that you were going to have a pretty normal childhood. I mean, they rode you about grades. They, you weren't given this pass to wander the streets of L.A. late at night, which in L.A. means like 9:30 or 10.
Yeah, no, I don't know how they did it, to be perfectly honest, but they raised my sisters and I to be pretty normal people and to be ambitious and to have work ethic, to get up in the morning and do something.
Yeah. That's why my dad at 90. I mean, he had a little something came up, but he was working until the day he got sick, and then he was dead 5 weeks later. And like, he was like, "What am I going to do?" Like, I don't play golf.
I had the same thing.
Yeah.
The week before my father passed and my dad died out of nowhere, we were having a conversation in which I was trying to convince him to slow down.
And he had no interest.
Yeah, it's so funny. I remember I said to him, "What's a place in the world that you've never been that you still want to go to?" I thought that would inspire something. You know what my father said?
What?
Nowhere. So then I go, okay. Okay. No. He just literally he's like, "I'm good." And then I said, "What's a place in the world you've been before, but you want to go back to?"
Right, yeah.
And he goes, "Stockholm." I said, "What?"
I
didn't know you'd ever been to Stockholm. And he goes, "Yeah, I went once for a weekend, and it was really beautiful and elegant, and the city had a plan, and everyone was kind of sticking to it, and I wish I had more time to explore it." So after my dad died, I went to Stockholm.
And?
It's gorgeous. He was right. It's a great city, but But my father had zero interest in slowing down. And if I have to, be honest.
You don't either.
I cannot. Look, I've just finished a movie. I've directed 10 movies. And I've produced a bunch more. I'm active in the Academy. I'm active in the Directors Guild. And all I can think about right now is, what am I going to write? What am I going to direct? How do I make something else? It's all I think about. And my anxiety is for the moments when I have nothing to create or make.
We're taking a quick break. Coming up, Jason Reitman shares some of his father's wisdom about filmmaking.
My dad and I could go for hours. I mean, that was kind of the frustration of anybody else when we were at a dinner table talking about movies, and we could just go on and on and on.
Jason Reitman's early movies were satires, funny and smart, but he also made dramas. Case in point, the 2018 political film The Frontrunner. It stars Hugh Jackman as the 1988 presidential candidate Gary Hart. In 2021, Jason worked closely with his dad on a new addition to the Ghostbusters franchise called Ghostbusters Afterlife. Ivan Reitman directed the first 2 Ghostbusters movies. Jason's latest movie is Saturday Night, which begins 90 minutes before the first ever broadcast of Saturday Night Live in 1975. Jason cast young, relatively unknown actors to play the show's legendary first cast members, like John Belushi, Chevy Chase, Dan Aykroyd, and Gilda Radner. Actor Gabriel LaBelle, who played a young Steven Spielberg in The Fabelmans, is SNL creator Lorne Michaels.
We can't expect people to recognize something they've never seen before.
Right, okay, yes, you're correct. But just, how about a final script?
It's not my kind of show.
Okay, well, what kind of show is it, Lauren? Do you even know what the show is?
Of course.
Are you gonna share it with the rest of us?
Yes. In 88 minutes.
Oh my God.
So Saturday night. So the inspiration, I love that the idea is what you'd seen that energy. It hadn't been on a live television show, but you'd seen that creative energy, you know, around Ghostbusters, right? When you're sitting there at 13 years old as your dad's making that, or however old you were.
Like
younger, I guess.
Yeah, I think the earliest inspiration is just being around the creative process and watching people make things. And then when I was older, I got to be a guest writer at Saturday Night Live. It was right after I directed Juno. They let me come and spend a week there. I wrote and directed a sketch. That was positively electric.
Yeah.
And being on that set was unlike any other set I'd ever been in my life. And this is, you know, at this point the show has been on for 35 years or something. And still there's a level of tension of whether they're going to pull it off, even though they know exactly what they're doing. And it was shortly after that that I thought, what was it like on opening night?
Yeah.
And frankly, you know that dinner party game where you go, if you could go back to any point in history, any place, where would you go to?
Yeah.
Opening night of Saturday Night Live was high on my list.
No, that's a good answer.
Yeah.
My answer is less good. It's always, I have $400 in cash and I go back to the Old West and make that last forever. Right?
You really want to be in the Old West?
I just think it would be like, I mean, no, because the need for a bath and the impossibility of getting one is profound.
Yeah, like I'm immediately thinking of the lack of technology, the lack of hygiene.
I could live without the technology. That would be a little bit of a blessing for a while.
Okay.
Right? But every time now, I mean, I love Westerns, but I'm always like, oh my God, these people smell.
I love camping.
Oh, I don't even love camping.
But I love hitting Starbucks a week later.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, I got it. So, no, I don't know. I mean, I just like the idea of like, what could I mean, the amount of sort of indulgent fun I could have with $400.
You want to go to Westworld is what you want to go to.
I want to go to Westworld. That's right, which was one of the first movies I saw with my dad that I loved. Like, I was just like, this is phenomenal and exciting and seems possible, right?
Crichton had a gift that doesn't get spoken about enough. His ability to kind of tap into the imagination.
Totally.
And literally on his literal worst books, he is still completely capturing your imagination and
in ways that other people aren't, right? I mean, very specific.
Plays to your intelligence, makes you feel smarter. I miss him. I miss not having more books from him.
Yeah, me too. I think I won't repeat the story. I told it with Emerald Fennell. We were talking about great movie experiences.
Yeah.
And for me, it was opening night at Jurassic Park. And that's, I mean, his world, though, that, you know, of that and seeing those dinosaurs and thinking, I get it. They're not real, but come on.
You know, I visited that set.
You were on that set?
I visited that set. I don't remember why. I was at my father's office on the Warner lot, which is where they shot a lot of it. They have a giant stage right in the center of the lot.
We're across the street from it now as we record this. Yeah,
right in the center of the lot. They have a giant stage. It's where they built Dana's apartment building for Ghostbusters, the whole rooftop of the original Ghostbusters. On that same soundstage is where they built the electrified fence where the two cars stop mid-movie and the T-Rex attacks them with the kids in the rain in the middle of the night. And I was walking around on the lot. My father had made a movie called Twins with Schwarzenegger and DeVito, and the special effects guy, Michael, one of the best in the world, was doing Jurassic. And I just ran into him on the lot, and I was a huge fan of the book. And Michael said, "You want to come see the set?" I was like, yeah. He took his lanyard, threw it around my neck, brought me in, and they were doing an iconic shot. They were doing the flashlight through the moonroof into the T-Rex's eye, and then his iris rotates, it shrinks, in reaction to the flashlight.
Like he's focusing. Right?
Yeah, well, and that the flashlight is making his iris shrink down to a pinpoint. And And I saw they had a giant T-Rex leg and they had the head and it was all, animatronics. And it felt so special.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I've never, I had a great experience at Die Hard, great experience at Out of Sight, but I think Jurassic Park just wins for the sheer, it was opening weekend, midnight show,
Yeah.
Uptown Theater in D.C., and, and people screaming with fear and delight, along.
Yeah, well, it's we take for granted being in the hands of a master.
Right, yeah.
And when Steven is making E.T. or Indiana Jones or Jurassic Park, yeah, they're movies that you can just, nowadays you can literally just stream any of them anytime you want. But when those movies first come out and you're in the hands of a genuine master, like Hitchcock level master,
right?
In my opinion, Shakespeare level master.
Totally. And I can understand it, unlike Shakespeare.
Yeah. I say not being that big a fan of Shakespeare.
Right, yeah.
We take for granted in real time that there was a moment where that movie hit theaters and no one had ever seen anything like it.
That's right. Yeah, it's really.
And he's a guy who kind of, he kind of proved it by making it back to back with Schindler's. That it's like he can actually kind of use not 100% effort and still crush you.
A couple things that I know your dad said to you that I loved when he called. So he called. I love this story. You just get you to retell it. Most people haven't heard it probably. He calls you one day, says, "Come over. I want you to watch episodes of 24 with me."
So, my dad and I could go for hours. That was kind of the frustration of anybody else when we were at a dinner table talking about movies. And we could just go on and on and on. And one day he calls me out of nowhere. He's like, "You got to come over and watch 24 with me." And I'm like, "The Kiefer Sutherland show?" And he goes, "Yeah."
It was like the first season?
Yeah. He goes, "It's amazing." I said, "Okay." So I go to my dad's house. We sit down in a movie theater and we start watching. And he's like, "Don't say anything for like 3 episodes." It's like, okay. So 3 hours later, it's like, "This is really good." He goes, "Yeah, I told you." And I said, there's got to be a dozen shows on television about terrorism. Why is this one so good? My dad looked at me like I was crazy. And he goes, "This isn't a show about terrorism. Terrorism is a location. This is a show about a man trying to keep his family together." And it was right in that moment, I think he said, "Never confuse your plot for your location."
Yeah, don't confuse location for plot. Yeah.
And that it's like, I feel like I learned how to make movies in that moment.
So I don't make movies, and I heard you say that probably 3 weeks ago now, and I've told 25 people that story.
It's so good. My father probably had, a couple dozen of those that he gave me, from right before I started filmmaking all the way to, our final conversations. And it's one of the things I miss the most is we talk about our dads a lot on this, but
yeah, it's all right.
Having a dad who actually had the answers.
Yeah, it's
because once you become a dad, you never feel like you have the answers.
Oh, I don't.
Feel like
I got nothing.
You feel like a fraud. My dad, whether he internally felt like a fraud or not, he gave me some extraordinary answers. And don't confuse the plot for the location. It's just that's an all-timer.
Yeah. Back to the Future is not a story about time travel.
Nope.
Right.
No. By the way, have you heard the story of where he got the idea?
Yeah, but finish that. So it's a story about the question, right?
Well, the question is...
Oh, so that, right, that story will answer it, yes.
Yeah,
right.
the story is Bob Gale wondered if he and his dad had met in high school, would they be friends?
Yeah, that's just the thing. And that's what Back to the Future is about. If you met your dad in high school, would you be friends?
Would you be friends?
Yeah. And how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to have some time travel. But that's just...
exactly.
That's just,
then we'll add time travel.
Right.
And, and you can say this literally about the greatest movies of all time. And in fact, the best movies of all time are the best examples of that. Jaws isn't about a shark. Godfather's not about the mafia. Like,
right.
It's the movies where it becomes about the shark. That's when you got a problem.
Right. That's right. That's when you got certainly a different kind of movie and not a truly memorable movie. Well, I mean, it is great to have a dad who has the answers. I want to get a couple questions in about Saturday Night because I was so intrigued by it. I liked it quite a bit. The audience, I thought, really was into it there at Telluride. I thought, and the but you're casting people who the audience for this movie, like they all know these people, right? Basically. I mean, of course, there are going to be people who see this movie who have no idea who
Here's the
anyone
funny
is.
thing. I mean, it's actually a smaller percentage than you think actually know who the people are.
I mean,
Because
so it's more people who have no idea or only a vague
that's
idea.
kind of the funny thing is that, my daughter's 18. The only reason she knows who all these characters are is because I made the movie.
Oh, is that right? You didn't, like, even with your history, even though Saturday Night Live mattered to you, you'd done that guest writing thing? Because my daughter now watches that. Maybe this is different. Our daughters are separated by, I think, 7 years. But for the last year and a half, my daughter watches Saturday Night Live on Peacock on Sunday morning.
And she watches the originals.
She watches the current season, but she'll go back. Like, she's just into it. She thinks that this show, and we live in Los Angeles, so we know a couple of people who were on it, or the kids there now. So but still, she's just she can't believe she's clearly dazzled that this was created and created live, and these sketches were done. So she's into it.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, I think probably the most famous person in the movie is Jim Henson.
Right.
Everybody knows who Jim Henson is. Right. But less than half the audience actually knows who Gilda Radner was or who John Belushi was.
Yeah, of course.
A little bit know who Chevy is. Many people know Aykroyd because of Ghostbusters. But certainly there was a large percentage of the audience that did know, and we wanted to get the casting right. But when I thought about casting these roles, it wasn't about impersonations. It wasn't about can the Aykroyd nail the Bassomatic sketch.
Right.
It was about in these 90 minutes, right before it goes live, at 11:30 on October 11th, 1975, the world changes. Right. There's the world before SNL and there's the world after. There's the world of once this thing exists that changes our definition of comedy, changes television. It introduces over the course of 50 years 100 actors whose names we now know, or at least 20 who are international movie stars. So it literally changes everything, but there's a moment in time right before where nobody knows what it is, and there's a good chance it won't even happen. And what I was curious about was, what does Dan Aykroyd think at 11 p.m. that night?
Right.
What does Lorne Michaels think at 10:30 p.m. that night? Where's Garrett Morris at? And it's in thinking about that question that you get to, all right, who are we going to cast and how are they going to nail this one emotion of, are they vulnerable? Are they led by the ego? Are they scared? From everything we learned about John Belushi, he knew that this was somehow going to be the end of him, that he was his most pure form on stage at Second City, and that there was going to be some sort of deterioration when he did this show. He would stop being the John Belushi that he thought he was, because he thought he was going to be Marlon Brando.
Right. Yeah, that's right. That was one of the really interesting things to come out of it.
So he goes into hiding.
Yeah.
He's scared. So these are the things that we're looking for in casting.
Yeah, I liked the fear. I liked the Belushi fear, the Garrett Morris fear. Right.
Garrett's trying to figure out, who am I?
Right.
Who am I? What is my identity in this
What am I doing here? What am I?
Yeah, or Chevy, whose ego needs to be humbled for him to move forward.
I met Chevy last year, 2 years ago, maybe now, the TCM cruise, which was super interesting.
Yeah.
And by the time it was over, really liked him. It took a bit because I was scared. First of all,
Chevy's tricky. Look, I grew up, so Chevy has known me since I was like a little child. And when he watched this movie, the first thing he said to me was, well, you should be embarrassed.
That doesn't sound like him.
There you go.
Yeah.
And so, and to a certain extent, it's like, I got a perfect Chevy.
Right.
Like, I got a Chevy moment.
That's right, yeah.
But also, like, really?
Really?
Like,
right.
You've known me since I was a child. I spent the last 2 years on this. I've made a love letter to you and your friends, and this is your response.
You should be embarrassed. Yeah. Oof. Well, that guy was good. Who played Chevy? That guy was good.
Yeah, Corey Michael Smith.
Yeah, he was good.
Killer.
Yeah. So the first we had a long form interview on stage, and he was just brutally harsh to me, and like it made the audience uncomfortable. This was on the TCM cruise, and then his wife, like, she was up on stage with him, and man, she helped smooth things over. The kids came up, and then and basically she was like, "Hey, man, I don't know if you get this. He's on your side, right? This guy." And this, and then he was lovely and funny. We played poker, and we're playing poker with Richard Dreyfuss. Like, this was fun. Like, it got fun. And then I met Bill Murray. His podcast dropped. We were taping this. It's episode 1 this season, and that was, I was scared too. I didn't know what to expect, and what I got was this sort of really interesting, thoughtful guy.
Well, Bill is magic.
Yeah, Bill is magic. Yeah,
Bill is genuine magic. And look, there's days you don't know which side of the bed he got out of, but what's really interesting about Bill is that whatever age he's now, he's in his early 70s.
Yeah,
his fastball is the same speed.
Yeah.
And that's the interesting thing, is comedy is unkind. And you lose your fastball, but nobody tells you.
Right.
If you play sports, you realize, they can hit my fastball now. Your body tells you when you're not as fast as anymore, when you're not as strong. Comedy doesn't tell you. You think you're just as funny, but you're not.
Right, and we've all seen it from comedians we like, and and legendary figures.
That's just time. That's life.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, you get a Bill Murray who the knife has stayed just as sharp, and it's inconceivable why.
Yeah, that's totally true. That's a great point. Yeah. So I wanted to get a couple more things before we get to these questions. Oh, it's just because some of the movies you like, and I don't know whether this is a real list of movies you like because it was on IMDb, but I'm sure it's movies you like. I'm just sure that there's broader, but there's so many that are similar with me, and I just wanted to ask you about a couple of them because you have Election on there.
Yeah,
Alexander Payne was a guest.
Yeah,
of course, he's always been a great supporter of TCF.
Election. That's one of the best movies of the last 30 years.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
scary good. Yeah.
But one of the other movies you love is Dr. Strangelove, which of course I also put on that list. Is that your favorite Kubrick? I mean, is that the Kubrick one?
A favorite Kubrick's almost impossible.
That's right. That's a terrible question.
But what I'll say is this, it was really important to me at the age I saw it because I didn't know comedy could do that.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? Like, if you don't know what it is when you start watching it, and what you're used to is pretty traditional comedy, or when you watch a black and white movie as a kid, you're like, I think I know what I'm about to see. And then all of a sudden you realize what it's doing, like what the moves are, what they're allowing to be funny.
I mean, Sterling Hayden in Dr. Strangelove, it's like one of the 10 funniest performances in the history of movies. I mean, it's
and unflinching.
Unflinching, totally, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, it's harsh.
Yeah, by the way, that was another lesson, is you can do comedy as Sterling Hayden being 100% serious.
Right.
That was a great lesson, because I think I grew up thinking, well, to do comedy, you have to be goofy. And you see a movie like that and you go, oh no, that's not necessary at all. Actually, you can play comedy 1,000% serious.
Serious, and also not crazy, uncomfortably mentally deranged, right? So it's not, you're not supposed to laugh at this. This is, but there's just, to have that career. And he only made 13 movies.
Yeah, I know.
I know. It's amazing.
I went to the premiere of Eyes Wide Shut when I was a kid.
You did? Yeah.
Yeah. It happened it was at the Village Theater, which I'm now a part owner in.
1999.
And
So Village Theater in Westwood?
Yes. Yeah. Which I now co-own with a group of directors.
Oh, right. Of course you do. That's
and
right. By the way, that was great that you guys did that.
Thank you.
It's great. Yeah.
And then the after party was at
Just I'm going to interrupt again, because it saved the theater.
This was a theater. This is a theater that was probably going to wind up being a supermarket or an Apple store, and it's a really important movie theater in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And the after party was at Chasen's, which is now Bristol Farms.
Right.
I couldn't save Chasen's, but I saved the Village.
Right. Would have been nice to save Chasen's.
And that was a really trippy premiere to be at. And I grew up going to movie premieres. And
why was that trippy?
You could feel something electric in the air. I think no one felt like they deserved to be there. Right. And the amount of celebrities in one room was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It was insane. And his 3 daughters were there. And they all stood up right before the movie started. Yeah. And that felt really special.
Yeah. What else you have on here? You have 2 Hal Ashby movies. Talk about an early career run, although he started late.
Yeah.
But his 7 movies in 9 years.
Yeah.
Between The Landlord and Landlord in 70, being there in 79.
Yeah.
And in between, you got Harold and Maude and Shampoo.
Yeah, Shampoo for me is an all-timer.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
And by the way, that should be on the list of best political films.
Totally. It wasn't, but it could have
I
been.
get why it's not.
Yeah.
But look, first of all, growing up in Los Angeles, to see, he captured Los Angeles in 1975. So for personal reasons, I'm always going to love it. But unresolved endings, I mean, Up in the Air is basically a love letter to Shampoo.
Yeah.
Because the ending of Shampoo is basically the same as Up,
That's right.
as Up in the
I
Air.
didn't even think about it. Yeah, of course it is. Yeah. Right.
And it's about dreamers. Dreamers and 5 people who cannot get what they need out of one person.
Right.
And it really is challenging monogamy in a really interesting way. And you got to really hand it to Warren Beatty, who's really smart, and he's really great at playing dumb guys.
He is, yeah. There's a fearlessness to Shampoo, and in a lot of different ways in the story, in Beatty's willingness to do it, and do it that way, yeah. And then you had Carnal Knowledge on this list. There's only like 7 or 8 movies. And Carnal Knowledge, we just had this. We're just back from the TCM cruise. We're taping this like a couple of weeks, and Rita Moreno was on the cruise. And we screened Carnal Knowledge.
Oh, no kidding!
On a Disney boat in the in the middle of the Caribbean.
You should have let it playing as you left. I love that movie.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's great.
Talk about brave.
Yeah, it's brave. Yeah.
Look, there's a moment when a director makes their bravest work, and you look at Mike Nichols, and he's coming off of the success of the previous films, and particularly coming off The Graduate. I know also Catch-22, but he's just using all the house's money to make that movie, and it's so gnarly. I don't know how that movie could have been made today, and it does this move where for the first third of the film, you kind of think you're ahead of the movie.
Right.
They're college kids. They're being goofy.
Right.
And then the second act hits and you realize, oh, wait a second.
Right. Something's changed.
The movie, I'm in time with the movie. And then the third act arrives and you realize, oh, no, the movie's way ahead of me.
Yeah. That's an interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah.
You got Taxi Driver. That seems self-explanatory.
That was on my list?
That's on your list, yeah.
I wonder when that list is from.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows whether they create it? So you like Taxi Driver, but you wouldn't necessarily put it on a top 10 list.
No,
right?
I like Taxi Driver, but it's not in my top 10.
But I'm going to guess this one. I'm going to guess The Conversation probably is.
Conversation's a killer.
Yeah,
Conversation is smoking. That's,
Conversation's pretty perfect, and a reminder like that. What couldn't Gene Hackman do? He can do everything.
Yeah,
anything you asked him to. We're taking another quick break. When we return, we'll have our Super 8, where Jason Reitman tells us which 90s directors he looks to for inspiration. And we're back. Time for this week's Super 8, where we ask our guests a series of set questions about movies they've watched, movies they've loved, and movies they'll never forget. All right. You ready for these questions?
Hit me.
All right, here we go.
Oh, my God. I feel like I've already answered them.
Well, we'll see. What was your most memorable movie watching experience?
I'm going to put it in an era of 98, 99, 2000, my first few years going to Sundance. I was a short filmmaker, and it was seeing movies there like, Run, Lola, Run, and Blair Witch, and I'm trying to remember what else I saw there at the time.
But you hear that question and you think special indie movies that weren't yet.
Yeah, Sexy Beast, American Psycho, Wet Hot American Summer. I mean, these were just
right.
I just felt really alive. I felt I was 19, 20, 21 years old. I was making short films, and I felt like I'd found my people. When I went to Sundance, I felt like, oh, here's everybody else like me who just wants to wake up at the crack of dawn and watch movies all day.
Pulp Fiction 2, no question.
I saw Pulp Fiction at the United Artists Theater in Westwood, now CVS, and lined up. And that day, I remember in like Dazed and Confused, they were talking about going to Aerosmith that night, the entire movie.
Right.
And that's how I felt about going to see Pulp Fiction.
Like you were all ready the whole day.
The most important band in the world was playing that night, and it was Pulp Fiction.
Was that was Tarantino the director? Like when you start this process, you're not really imitating your father, you're imitating Tarantino? Or
1,000%.
Yeah.
like literally everybody else my age.
Right. So you had no choice. Like,
Yeah,
oh,
you had the T-shirt, and you
Right,
just
right.
you wanted to be the guy.
Right. What movie did you love in high school?
And Pulp Fiction is definitely that was an electric movie, but also Linklater was really important for me.
yeah.
So the back-to-back of Slacker and Dazed and Confused.
Yeah.
Soundtrack to Dazed and Confused, the first album I ever played in my car.
Is that right?
Yeah. And Slacker.
I don't think I ever played a soundtrack.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's just
Kevin Smith used to say that the importance of Slacker was a generation of filmmakers saw it and went, wait, that counts?
I have this friend, all right? She's a gynecologist in Hollywood, and she scored this for me from the lab where she works. It's a Madonna pap smear. Check it out. I know it's kind of disgusting, but it's like getting down to the real Madonna.
And he's kind of right, but Slacker's also kind of genius, and people don't really talk about
wait, that counts. That's a great
like what Linklater has given us over
totally.
the years.
No, we just watched Bad News Bears. Like, you forget,
Yes.
I mean, like, that's not. Doesn't seem like that guy would have done that.
Yeah.
I mean, but it makes sense. It's just
the guy who made Boyhood.
Right. That doesn't.
And Scanner Darkly.
What movie would you show to a date or somebody you're interested in?
I'm going back to Linklater, Before Sunrise, Before Sunset.
Yeah.
I think those are the two most deeply romantic movies I think I've ever seen.
Is there a movie with whoever your significant other is that's like, I mean, I get it. The real answer is, of course, there's not a deal breaker if it's somebody you love. But is there a movie that you would be like, wait, you don't like? This becomes difficult.
Oh man, so many.
Right, that's the thing. It's like
there's like 100 movies. I'm like, how
I just
could
don't
you
get
not
Dr.
like...
Strangelove. You're like, what? Yeah, right.
In a weird way, I could almost accept that. If someone said, I don't like E.T.,
right, that's
I guess you don't have a heart. I mean, are you
since
alive?
we started talking about my father, so E.T. comes out. I'm 15 years old. Dad had a friend. Folks had a friend who lived in East Hampton, and when people came to East Hampton, they gave us their house for 2 weeks. So we used to go to East Hampton from D.C. And we see E.T. And I just remember my dad saying, he goes, "If he could fly, why does he need me?" Like that was Frank Mankiewicz's takeaway on E.T. So great, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and because he was my dad, I then adopted that. Like, I didn't like it either because even though I totally liked it, right? But I wanted.
By the way, I love that in this movie about a boy who needs a dad. You go watch it with your actual dad, and your dad's like, "Fuck that film."
Well, I'll tell you then real quick a story I've told before. So I see Field of Dreams. Right, and I see it when it comes out.
Yeah,
big baseball fan. I'm a baseball fan because of my father, and we talked about it all the time. And I see it in California when it comes, when it opens, and my dad's back east, so I can't call him till the next morning to tell him I wept. And thought about how much it means to us, and I'm so glad that you're in my life, and you're the best dad ever. And I go, "Hey, Pop, I saw Field of Dreams last night." He goes, "Oh my God, we saw it too. If you build it, who will come? What is this?"
Oh no!
Oh, instantly, and I'm like, I pant. I do what you're doing. I'm like, "Oh no, no, no!" And I'm like, "Yeah, totally." And then to my father's eternal credit, he did pretend later that never happened and that he always loved it. He was like, "What are you talking about? I thought about you." It's like, He knew he'd made a terrible mistake.
Oh God, that's amazing.
Movie that makes you cry without fail?
Stand By Me.
Oh, yeah, good answer.
Yeah,
that's the first two.
When River Phoenix.
Yeah.
When he talks about what happens to River Phoenix.
It's of course there's
gone. And Breaking Away. I'll add one to that. One more father-son one just for you and I.
Yeah.
Breaking Away. When you're not a cutter, I'm a cutter.
Hell, I don't want to go to college, Dad. To hell with them. I'm proud of being a cutter.
You're not a cutter. I'm a cutter.
Yeah, come on. Yeah.
I mean,
right.
Dead.
Right, because it's half out of nowhere, but entirely credible.
Yeah.
Like you just don't expect it, but you're like, no, of course now you look back, you're like, no, he was really nice. I mean, I imagine there's 75 of these, 7,500, but movie that makes you laugh without fail.
Little Miss Sunshine.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's brilliantly funny. And there's a movie called 24-Hour Party People that people don't talk about enough.
I don't know
It's a
that.
Michael Winterbottom film with Steve Coogan that I think is just genius.
Steve Coogan makes me laugh,
Yeah,
largely without fail. So, vast warehouse here. You're a thief in this question. All movie props, every movie ever, your dad's movies, your movies, Casablanca, everything's in there. You can steal one thing. What do you take?
This is a great question for me because I actually do collect props.
You do?
So I have a small but good collection.
Yeah.
I have a hoverboard.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have the tablet from The Last Crusade that sets Indiana Jones off on his journey.
Oh, well, that's pretty great.
I got a couple frogs from Magnolia.
Oh, okay. All right. I like all this.
Yeah. So I and obviously Ghostbusters props galore.
Right. Is anything big, or are they all relatively small? Well, I guess
and the tablets.
The tablets
yeah,
pretty
it's
big,
real.
yeah.
That is decent size. All right. So ones that got away.
Mm-hmm.
The briefcase from Pulp Fiction went up for auction one year.
Mm-hmm.
Went for a fortune. I could.
Right. Bounds are reason.
But that.
Do you remember what it went for?
It was six figures.
No.
If I could have anything, I mean, stuff that frankly should be in the Academy Museum should not be in my house.
Right.
But E.T.'s bicycle.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, or Elliot's bicycle.
Yeah.
The motorcycle from Shampoo.
Uh-huh. Yeah, well, that's good. Yeah.
And the one that actually just did go to the Academy Museum, Heather Graham's roller skates from Boogie Nights.
Oh, that went to the Academy?
That just went to the Academy. They just announced a new batch of things, including the La Bamba guitar and Pee-wee's bicycle from Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And Quentin just donated his handwritten script of Pulp Fiction.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, they have an extraordinary collection.
What was your mom's favorite movie? Is your mom still alive?
My mom's still alive.
Yeah.
And I don't know is the honest truth. I've watched a lot of classics with her. I even, my mother has dementia, but like we recently watched Casablanca and she loved it. So
my mom had
I'm going to call it that.
Alzheimer's for 5 years before she died. Yeah. She did, and she loved watching movies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry about that. It's super hard. It was every day that had to deal with it was hard. And what about your dad?
Singing in the Rain.
Singing in the Rain?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Loved it.
Surprising answer.
Just like, what do you think he was going to say?
I don't know, but some, not Singing in the Rain, not a musical of any kind. I didn't.
My dad loved music. He was a music major.
Yeah, right. No, yeah,
always
right.
wanted to make a musical in his life. I think that's one of his great disappointments was he'd never made a musical, and he worked on a few.
Jason Reitman, this has been great. Sorry to take so much time, but I've enjoyed every second of it.
I did too. It was a total pleasure, and we got to take about my favorite thing. We got to talk about movies.
Yeah, and our fathers.
And dads. Movies and dads.
Movies
Are you kidding
and dads. Me? Come on, it's great. There are some interviews that resemble a conversation I'd have with a friend. This was one of those. I'm always grateful when that happens. It's a pleasure to talk about my dad with someone who was close to their father. And as a bonus, someone who also never saw cocaine until they were in their 40s. In honor of Ivan Reitman, I'm watching Singing in the Rain over the holidays. I probably would have anyway. You can also catch Jason's new film Saturday night on various streaming services. That's our show. Thanks for listening. You can find many of the movies we talked about on the streaming service Max. We made a list for you. It's in our show notes. James Kim produces and edits Talking Pictures. The show is booked by Noea Murphy, Susan Bisak, and Missy Burns-Halpern. Glenn Matullo mixes each episode. Production support from Phil Richards, Yaakov Friedman, Liz Winter, Nicole Hill, and Cameron Kell. Angela Carone is our executive producer. Special thanks to Michael Gluckstad, Allison Cohen, and Kenya Reyes from the Max Podcast team. I'm Ben Mankiewicz. See you next time.